We're live right
We are?
now. Yeah.
Oh, we're live. Oh, great.
Okay, so we're live again.
I'm not, I don't have a phone.
No. Okay. Oh, we're sitting here.
Something in the door that's, we're live.
I noticed that.
So where are you going? What happens on that?
So you want to follow the line, yeah?
Got some time.
I'm not doing it. It's fine.
I'm sitting where my.
I thought it was like an honorable thing, but I guess not, so.
Oh, okay, we're clamped. I'm okay right here.
RTMP:/a.rtmp.2/live2.
Did you get pictures? How'd you get them? Yeah.
Completely different screen. Here, it's 4HH.
Yes, so I think
4HH.
it's gonna segue, yeah.
3B.
Al, you're next to Peter.
Yeah, you move me around.
Yeah.
Who moved my cheese? Who moved my cheese? You read that book?
I know you usually like over here, so I was trying.
Give you guys some more room.
I thought Lacastic was supposed to be an overflow.
Yes, the other was that.
Nice, next to me.
Don't worry, you're all gonna be back where you were next time, next month, don't press.
It's changed, Jeffrey. Changed.
Obviously, you guys are having trouble.
Trying to avoid emergency. Record.
Hi, how you doing?
Keep trying. You should be wondering.
Hey, how you doing?
Try.
We're not.
Remember Yoda? Do or do not. There is no try.
Right now, we have
Okay, all right, so now we put them on one screen. Yes. And you just wanted clean the guy. Or, are they all over colors? Now I think those. Okay, thank you, guys. You're welcome.
Yeah, go to meeting
Yes,
separate.
they are calling, yeah, they are calling in, we have 2 callers on already.
Walk with turkey. White. Could be sometimes
White corned beef.
white corned beef.
That's a sacrilege.
That's what I was gonna say.
You know anything about this? Don't worry.
I know. It will be last fall. You know I did well. Okay.
How many?
One day.
One day?
Oh, no.
Oh, but you see, on your password.
So I just need to put in Sheridan's and 492@gmail.com.
That whatever password.
We've got 2 in there.
I just can't, I just forgot.
It finally happened. Nobody wants to sit next to me anymore.
Took you all this time.
I tried all my.
Yeah, this kind of yellow.
No, but never.
Shape on the big phone. Yeah. Yeah, like you anyway.
Are you okay now or not okay?
Check your password.
I had it on my shoulder.
Yeah, you have a nice shoulder over there.
Yeah.
Take it right out. Move it. More, I'm sure, because you showed that TV, how I do it. Right.
Are you sure?
Have dinner at home? You get home, your wife and kids get peanut butter sandwich. Immediately.
Fortunately, you probably still inside the room.
That's right.
But wait, you understand that? Still, every single time.
You do?
That's true, yeah.
I didn't get the invite. I didn't get the invite. Oh, man.
They would have to invite. Although I ruined it with chicken fingers on lunch. I had like 10 minutes to go. I mean, between meetings and actually shoot a thing.
Oh.
I like soup.
Oh.
I was thinking salad, but I should
Back to our.
Well, I left her a message, maybe about 15 minutes ago.
Next minute, and I'm like,
So I didn't say
I didn't make sure. I told you.
And if I did, what's the next? Because there's about 300.
Yeah.
There's a whole.
Yeah, my, you think it.
Mark's wife and I are friends on Facebook.
Yeah?
Of course she did.
I still haven't got the dietary.
Pull her not to. How far that goes. Yep. We are inspired a little bit already.
1, 2, 3 on the line.
I don't doubt it.
Sounds like quiet. People on the phone.
Sharon gets to see it, we have 3 voting on.
Sure.
Sharon gets to see it, we have 3 voting on this.
Right.
Yes.
Conferencing service, and IT.
Yes.
Everything's so perfect.
Once you have like, you've got brain. Gino's
Yeah.
here.
Well, you can get tired of this guy easy.
I'm gonna call, I'm gonna call our meeting to order. We got, some things that we need to talk about, quickly. And, we're gonna go into an executive session, right at the get-go, but before we do, let me formally call the meeting to order and ask everybody on the phone to please identify themselves.
This is Jack Quinn.
Darby, Jack Quinn, anyone else?
Michael Hoffman.
Mike Hoffert? Anyone else? All right. Okay, so we have a quorum.
Yes, we do.
We'll dispense with the reading of the minutes unless there are any additions, deletions, or corrections. If there are none, we'll dispense with that and
Just move to approve.
approve them as presented. We're gonna move immediately to executive session. I'll entertain a motion to do so. So moved. So moved by Bishop Badger, seconded by Mr. Bennett. All in favor? Opposed? Thank you. We'll go into executive session momentarily. opposed? Thank you. 30 seconds, we'll come back into public session and go right to Mr. Calucci.
Actually, we have issues.
That's right. You can finish. Good, Rod, we're up, Rod?
Yes.
What's that? So, the, actually, in my mistake, we're going to have a presentation this afternoon by Donna Brown on patient experience, to go through some of the things that we are focused on, particularly in context now of the Joint Commission. So, Donna.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
And now you guys know me. Oh, I love my feedback. So good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
Thank you. So I'd like to start out with just a little bit of background on HCAHPS and kind of walk you through a little bit about our survey that patients receive and give us their feedback regarding their care while they're here. So HCAHPS, or otherwise known as Hospital Consumer Assessment of Healthcare Providers and Systems, and we see why we have such a short acronym for that, because that's always a mouthful to say. It's a standardized survey that is used to collect the patient's perception of their care, hospital care while they're here. The standard came out actually in 2006, and prior to 2006, there were no national standards for actually collecting or publicly reporting the patient's perception of their care. And CMS created this as sort of a level playing field in order to, one, gather that information, and two, set up a structure where the information would be reported publicly. So again, it's reported publicly on Hospital Compare, which allows the consumer to make a fair and objective comparison between other hospitals. So you have a repository of all the hospitals in the United States that report in. Approximately 3,528 hospitals report in, and there are 148 hospitals in New York State that report, just to kind of give you a playing field of what it looks like. So it includes state and national averages on the Hospital Compare website, and it acts as an accountability entity which increases transparency for quality of care provided by the patient. We measure 9 domains, which consist of 21 different questions that are asked within the 9 domains. The domains focus on communication with physician, nursing, responsiveness of staff, pain management, communication about medications, discharge information, cleanliness of the hospital environment, as well as how quiet it is, and then the transition of care. There are 32 questions that are asked. We've added 3 additional questions around food. The methodology for the surveys are 4 different components. They can be mailed out, which is typically the one that's used the most. There's a telephone survey that can be done, which is also very costly. And there's a mixed use when you do telephone comparison. There's a combination of mail and telephone, and then there's the kind of like the automated call response, call the patient, activated by the voice, and then the patients can respond to the questions. And again, I mentioned earlier, there are 3,528 hospitals that report in, and 148 from New York State.
Don, is that email or regular mail?
Regular mail. Regular mail. So some of the support that we have in place to help us on our journey with patient experience, we have patient advocates. And you can see a picture of them there. Michelle Say is our clinical patient advocate, the pastoral care department. Sue McKegney, Michelle Blackburn, Pat Harding, and Josephine are all in the tower. Lisa and Sylvian are at the ED, and then Marquis is in behavioral health. And Emily has just been in the, she accepted a position for outpatient because we see that there's an opportunity there to assist our outpatients as well as it relates to the patient experience and addressing
So
their
Donna, for the board, just talk what a typical day might be for one of those individuals.
Karen, do you want to talk about the roles of the advocates on the units?
The advocates arrive and they visit every single patient on the unit to find out what we can do to support them to have basically the very best experience that they have in the hospital. So it could be anything from I forgot my reading glasses at home to I normally read the paper every day to I don't understand what my plan of care is. It could be anything. And the advocates work with all of the other professions on the unit to help make whatever that patient needs happen. And it's very individualized because every patient might have different needs. Somebody might say, I don't understand how much this is costing me. So it might be a call to the financial department to get someone up. It could be that I have an anniversary card and I need to get it to my my family in Alaska and I'm here. What do I need to do? And so they help with that. So it's very individualized to what every single patient needs on the floor.
And they're tremendous support, as Karen talked about, to the care team that's on the floor. They're actually integrated right in. They do daily rounds in addition to support the team. So the advocates play a very, very strong role in supporting the patients as well as the care team.
Great.
So our patient experience goals for ECMC, of course, is to become one of the top performing hospitals at the 99th percentile. Best practices show that in order to reach that domain and to reach that goal is to increase our score year over year in all of our domains. The top decile, again, that's where we want to be. We look to achieve that in the next 2 to 4 years, which is 10% of the hospitals. And we're focusing on likelihood to recommend as well as rate the hospital. And we chose those, of course, at the individual level where I talked about the various domains. Each of the departments are focusing on, their best practices to achieve that. So we looked at likelihood to recommend and rate the hospital because that's something that touches everyone across the hospital. So it's not just nursing that we're focusing on, it's not just physician communication, but everyone can identify with likelihood to recommend and to rate the hospital. So whether you're in finance, whether you're in housekeeping, whether you're in dietary, you can relate to improving those scores. This is our current scorecard as of last week, May 23rd. And you can see where we have our goals for 2019. And for the most part, we're either exceeding or achieving. We do have some opportunity in Rate the Hospital. Our current goal is at 71% and we are at 70. Responsiveness of staff is at 69 and we're at 67%. Cleanliness of the hospital, 66%. We're currently at 64%. And then communication about medication is 65 and we're at 64. And then discharge information, 93% and we're at 91. And so we do have plans in place to work to increase the scores. And what it is, at this stage of where we are in the journey of patient experience, we've done a lot of education on the forefront in terms of having teams understand what patient experience is and is not. It's not about smile training, it's about meeting patients where they are and really helping them to kind of navigate through the process of healthcare and being consistent. So now it's really about driving that accountability and being consistent in driving that. So that's what we know will increase the scores over time and create the consistency that we need to see. It's that cultural shift. We're working closely with Joe and his team to look at our training going forward in terms of how we're training the staff, how we're getting feedback from the staff, how we implement changes to make practices and systems work more efficiently.
And on a small percentage increases can mean
Right,
huge,
small percentage,
can mean
absolutely.
huge percentile
Yes.
increases.
Yes. So some of our ongoing initiatives, we do department reviews of scores, monthly scorecard audits. I mentioned our patient advocates. We have rounding, we do rounding in real time. The use of discharge phone calls on some of the units. I know, I don't know, Karen, if you want to talk about Patty Kivling, what she's doing.
We try to anticipate what our patients might need going home, and we set a plan with our patient, also based on what the physician orders and any other needs. But then in the old-fashioned world, we never knew what really happened. Now we try to call as many of our patients possible that will pick up the phone post-discharge to find out how everything is going. So maybe they thought that they were going to be able to get their medications, but the reality is they can't afford their medications. So then we take that back and we work with the physicians and pharmacy to figure out what we could do. Maybe they thought that their boyfriend was going to help them at their house, and now they realize that that's not going to happen. So we could work with getting home care delivered to their house. So we really try to take their feedback about the hospitalization, and we put it together in a report for the managers of the units so that they could look at ways we could process improve to make things better for the next patient. Plus, try to do service recovery and make sure that that patient feels that they were supported while they were at home, and that they receive kind of a wraparound service from us. So we really try to call all the med-surg patients that are here, as long as they answer their phone.
And the other piece too, our discharge team, working in conjunction with them as well to anticipate, again, what the needs are going to be of the patients once they're discharged home, and to make sure, to Karen's point, that those wraparound services are available for the patients and for the families. Something that I mentioned earlier when I talked about hospital compare, and if you go home and you have some spare time and you go to hospital compare and you look at the scores, what you'll notice is there's a delay in the reporting of the scores. So we look at the scores in real time. Unfortunately, what patients get to see are scores that are at least 18 months old. So the reporting period, unfortunately, there's a delay on the publicly reported side, but what we see on a daily basis are real-time scores. And Charlene, I don't know if you want to add to that in terms of if there's a reason as to why CMS does that.
I mean, Hospital Compare is always notoriously way behind on their data. So, when they're anywhere, 18 months is really almost on time for them. So by the time we get the data back, submit to them, they go through what they're doing with it. It's usually at least a 1.5 year lag what's up there. For most of the things that are on Hospital Compare, this is just one piece of it that's delayed that much.
And so sometimes what you might see, we've already looked at and we've done process improvement around those areas that might need that. So I just wanted to point that out. So again, some of our ongoing initiatives is that we have our Hour of Power monthly meeting. We're working in conjunction with the design team collaboration with Kaleida. Our PFAC, which is our Patient Family Advisory Council. We have one for the inpatient, we have one for behavioral health, and actually just had an opportunity to talk with Dr. Kaler, and we're looking at possibly putting one in place for a transplant at the end of the year. We report out at new hire orientation every week. And as you can see in one of the photos, the photo there to your extreme left, at the end of the new hire orientation, I have them complete, and I know it's fine print, I have them complete a little note card. And it says, I am the patient experience, right? And what we added to that is, I am the patient experience because we can sit here and say, I'm the patient experience, I'm the patient experience. But I want them to actually define that as we go through orientation and we talk about patient experience. What makes you stand out from the person that's sitting next to you? What are your values? What are your convictions? What are you bringing to the table that makes you stand out? And I have them keep that with them, because on the days that, you know, you might wake up and might be having an off day or something, just to kind of remind you of what your North Star is, that's what you can look at. And you can look at that and say, I'm in healthcare, I'm in service because, whatever your because is. We report out quality leadership. Donna has put together the quality leadership, and I know, Donna, you presented last month or the month before? A couple months ago on that. So all the entities around the table report out again on quality. We report out at Leadership Council with Joe and his team every month. And then we also present at University. It's such a tongue twister. The University. So we have a newsletter that's on the horizon, and we're looking at launching that along with our patient experience intranet right around August. So you guys will definitely receive a copy of that. We send out thank you notes to our patients. We have the teams on the floors and in various departments. Just take a few minutes to write a note to a patient, a family, or an additional team member, just recognizing the teammate for what they do, and then recognizing patients in terms of allowing us to take care of them. We have uniforms that we've implemented across various departments. We're excited, and Pam, I had to put Metz and Crawford in there because we're so excited about having them on the team and some of the improvements that we've seen thus far, and additional equipment upgrades in various areas. And I'll close out with just talking briefly about some of the other things that go on kind of behind the scenes to support our patients, is that our trauma team, they tend to visit patients on the med-surg unit. So once they leave the trauma area, they'll follow the patients and the families up to the med-surg units just to see how they're doing, how they're progressing, and to offer that extra support. And then we started an initiative saluting our veterans. We have over 30 volunteers that go in just to say thank you. Thank you for your service. Thank you for your commitment. There's a tent card with a special message from Tom that's in their room, along with a flag or a stick pin, whichever is appropriate. And we also place a tent card outside of the door, so when anyone enters the patient's room that is a veteran, they can acknowledge them for their service as well. I know that was a lot of information. I kind of ran through it quickly because I know we're on a short time frame.
Donna, with a
Yes,
large amount of our patients coming in through the ER, is that a part of what we gauge also, what their experience is in the ER?
Yes, so currently there is a survey that patients get when they visit the ER. It's not active yet through CMS. They've been testing it for the last several years, and hopefully it'll go active soon. But we make the commitment to sign on to do the survey earlier, so we can stay in front of whatever the issues are. We also have the 2 patient advocates that are in that area to help support with whatever the needs are. We have comfort cards for patients and families that might be there for a long period of time. So we have a couple of different initiatives that we're working on as well in the ED to support patients and families.
Does that impact the scorecard at all?
No, it's separate.
But some of those indicators are public, like, so for instance,
Not
wait,
on, not on the ED side.
on the ED side, so wait times are public and all those things are public for
Yeah.
how long it takes a patient to get to, if it's
Right,
within
and
those
another
reports.
Yeah, in another capacity, but not through,
No, not through patient experience,
Right.
right,
not yet anyway.
yeah, yeah.
How do we compare to the other 148 hospitals there in New York State?
So currently we have a 3-star rating, which is that's 46% of, the hospitals. We're right there, we're right in the middle, with them. There's one specialty hospital in New York City, and they have a number 1 star rating.
That's because they're all elected.
I'm sorry?
That's not because, but one of the reasons is they're all elected.
Right, that's what I was getting ready to
So,
say.
yeah.
So no matter if you're the ECMC safety net level 1 trauma hospital, or the specialty boutique hospital that's in New York City, we all get measured across the board the same way. There's no adjustment for case mix or anything.
And the American Central Hospitals, which obviously is public hospitals, has been fighting that for a long time.
Long time.
Yeah, because we're case mix adjusted for a lot of other scores, a lot of quality scores, and maybe not as much as we should want to be. But for this, it's no matter who you are, it's the same. So it's a little bit more of a challenge for us, but we accept it.
We accept it, but and the fact of the matter is that we still remain at our 3 stars. We haven't dipped. We've continued to climb. We continue to climb consistently. But understand and recognize while we're climbing, so are the other 3,000 hospitals along with us. But we still maintain a good standing.
And that was one of the other questions, because you do remember that years ago, we had this vision that this was coming, and we had this great head start.
Yep.
We were being recognized for having this head start. Do you still feel that we're kind of still leading this pack, or has the pack caught up to us in regards to where we are? Do you see some places growing faster than our growth, and for what reasons?
I see, when we talked about the specialty hospitals, I think they have sort of an advantage, so to speak. But when you look at like hospitals, I would say we still lead the pack in that regard, only because we did start so early.
So, for example, a hospital for special surgery, you may have 1 or 2 doctors, because it's all orthopedics, right? Come in, whereas we have complex medical patients, so you put the communications with doctors, they could have 8 consulting services on them. So that communication with doctors, all you need out of that one is one physician not to communicate well, and it'll affect your score, right? They don't delineate between attending physicians, not attending physicians, residents, fellows, they don't delineate. So it's more of a challenge, but it's more more work that we feel like we can continue to influence. So.
And our team, we have some great teams. We have an amazing team, and not just saying that because I'm here presenting, but you constantly hear that when we have regulators come in, people that just come and they visit the hospital, they talk about the culture of the hospital and the organization. So we do some tremendous work in the region, and in comparison to some of our other organizations, we still lead the pack.
Other questions for Donna? Thank you, Donna.
Thank you. Peter.
Go ahead, Peter.
Is it my turn, Mr. Chairman?
Yeah, just let me set it up real quick. So, obviously, as part of the patient experience, one of the things we've really tried to focus on here is we talk about our culture a lot. And John and I have talked about this a lot, but we really need to have, a North Star, a mantra that for our organization. So we've been working over the past few months to put something together with the employees, involving employees to get them excited about who they are. So we're launching that this week. And with that, Peter, the reason that the clock is still behind us is so you can watch it when you give your presentation.
I don't see a clock anywhere. I'm looking this way.
Thank you, Tom. I have this sort of like, remember heard the comedian Gallagher? He used that little interactive routine of his. We're going to do a little Gallagher kind of presentation, if that's okay.
We're live.
I do. We, I have some items here that I'm gonna refer to, but what I wanted to do is share with you what Tom just give you a brief overview of. Everybody knows that for several years we've been really concentrating heavily on our outdoor external marketing advertising efforts. And we like to think that things have moved in the direction that we would have hoped they did. And certainly this representation from Business First back in February helped sort of solidify what we were hoping we were going to achieve when we set out on this path a few years ago. So that was really looking externally, showing people outside of ECMC what ECMC was really about, what the clinicians and the staff here do on a day-to-day basis, and do so in such an extraordinary way. So now we're looking inward, and what we're doing is focusing attention inside the building to our 3,700 ECMC family members and telling their story internally to the patients, the visitors, the families, loved ones that are here in the facility on a day-to-day basis. So what we did was we reached out, we thought, how should we craft our messaging? How can we really get to the heart of what it is everybody does here? And so we thought, what better way than to go to the frontline staff? So we assembled about 15 frontline members of the ECMC family and did a focus group with them. The advertising marketing firm that we work with, Martin, helped facilitate that. And out of that session, they did about a 2-hour session, about roughly 2 months ago. They came out with these 3 themes that they thought would best suit this effort that we would want to do internally. And those were the themes then that were presented to the broader hospital community. And from that, we distributed both hard copy and electronically. We got over 400 responses from everybody from all sections of the hospital. And this is what they came up with. This is what they decided that they felt was the best representation, both from a graphic standpoint and from a thematic standpoint, to convey to the public that we're here for their care. So this is the first time we've shown it to anybody. The staff have not seen it yet. So in fact, what we're going to do is the day after tomorrow, we're going to reveal this to the staff of the hospital. And we're going to do it over a course of 3 sessions on Thursday 30th, starting at 1 a.m. in the morning with the overnight staff from 1 a.m. to 3 a.m. Then we're going to do it from 11 a.m. to 2 p.m. and then 4 p.m. to 6 p.m. It's modeled after what we do annually with our Employee Appreciation Day, where we are in the staff overflow and staff come, they get lunch, and we express our appreciation for what they do. This will be similarly constructed to convey to them, again, our appreciation. We're going to provide them T-shirts, which all of you will have at your disposal here this evening, and also these packets of or bags of materials that just some little mementos and tchotchkes that they can take with them to help underscore what it is we're trying to communicate. In addition, we've created a video, and what we did 2 weeks ago was over the course of a couple of days, and Dr. Grimm participated. We had 88 members of the ECMC family over a 2-day period tape lines from a script that we developed that would go into this video. 88 people from every section of the hospital, from doctors to nurses to environmental services to plan ops to financial services. Everybody, Terrace View, everybody was involved, and it's still in post-production. I'd like to show it to you now if I could, but we're still getting it done to have it ready for Thursday. But I will make sure that you'll have it. It's at Silver Cup Studios in Queens. It's been a difficult transition with them, but we're working it out. So what we are doing in addition to that to help sustain this and maintain it and ensure everyone's participation is we have various tactics that we want to carry out routinely from here on out, where we reinforce our passion, our patient's theme throughout the house. So, for instance, various tactics we come up with is a distribution of an email every Friday, where we'll have patient and employee quotes that will be disseminated to to everybody in the house, so they'll see how people are reacting to the treatment and care that they receive, and also give our employees an opportunity to express themselves as well. In addition to that, I might add that Karen Zemansky and in fact Donna have provided us with a wealth of communications from patients in various formats. But we're going to take that information and we're going to utilize it in a way that protects their confidentiality, but to present it throughout the house in various displays so that everybody can see just what people are saying about the care and treatment that they receive here. We'll also reinforce the whole theme and the effort behind this campaign in our annual employee picnic and leadership council meetings. We're talking about maybe at leadership council, what we'll do is tell them a story related to a patient experience and tie that into the whole theme of this effort. What we're doing in addition to all that is we've developed signage that will go throughout the house, showing the people that work here, showing them in a way that shows the patients and the visitors and their families who the people are that are ECMC, and reinforcing that it's this family of people that work together collaboratively to care for the people that come here on a daily basis. So these are just some examples of what we're intending. These 6 individuals were all part of the taping session 2 weeks ago. What we did an overflow. People came in, they taped, and then after they taped, we photographed every single one of them. So we have now a repository of the images of all the staff that participated, and we can always expand it and build on that. Bless you. But what we have is this, and what we're thinking about doing is what they call environmental signage around the hospital that will show, again, the staff to our visitors and to the patients that they're there for them, that they care for them, and that their passion is for their patients. So that's essentially it. We're pretty excited about it. It's going to be a busy day on Thursday, and we'd like for all of you to please take a T-shirt. We have them in various sizes. That if you care to pick whatever one suits you, and then we have the bags as well.
Thank you. Yeah, I think, we're obviously looking at I said to Peter today, I said, we're going to have this kickoff, but sustainability within the organization, and really focusing on our employees have an opportunity to voice how they feel about our patients. We have many venues in which we do that now,
right?
And really starting to integrate it within everything that we do, as well as social media. And some
we're going to engage them through social media, and then social media has been, as I think everybody, the board knows, has been very, very, very successful over the last couple of years. People really got engaged with that. They react to it very well. I might add also, when we do this on Thursday, DJ Milk will be in there providing some entertainment for everybody. We'll show everybody the video as well. So, and they're excited. Everybody that participates, I've seen so many of them over the last couple of days.
The video will be ready?
Video will be ready.
We just set it back for a couple edits.
No, it's just like, this Spielberg's a little difficult to work with, but we'll get through it. But I've run into several people that participate, and they're very excited. They're like, gee, you asked me to be in this, really? And they really appreciate that. So it's been fun.
Does this move us on from TrueCare?
Pardon me?
Does this move us on from?
No, TrueCare is still, the difference between healthcare and TrueCare is still a part of our external messaging. This is more that internal North Star. Andy Davis has been about, John provide great guidance, Tom, so we could coalesce this into more of an internal effort that everybody could sort of rally around. Great. Thank you very much.
Really like the video.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Peter. Now, Mr. Colucci.
Thanks, John. Good afternoon, everyone. The first order of business today on your agenda is a resolution authorizing the corporation to enter into an agreement with KeyBank in relation to a revolving line of credit, which the corporation has been offered. For those of you who have been engaged in this board's activities for many years, you know that the way in which we go about purchasing services or products is governed largely by state law, and in some instances by both state law and our procurement guidelines. One of the methods that is allowed to be used is what is known as a sole source procurement. We're asking the board to authorize that in this instance. That would make this somewhat unique, except that this particular service that's being offered, which is being generated out of our finance department, so I'll defer any questions you have about the substance of it to my friend Steve Gary, is really a sole source. It is an uncollateralized revolving line of credit. And we won't be able to get that from any other institution other than KeyBank, according to my erstwhile chief financial officer. In order to complete the process, however, we have our own internal protocol, which mirrors some guidance that was published many years ago by the New York State Office of the State Controller. We will follow that process. We will complete the paperwork. This resolution, as you will see in your packet, essentially says that assuming that the CFO goes through that process and reaches the determination as a result of that process that this is in fact a sole source situation, then he has the board's authority to consummate the transaction with KeyBank. Normally, we do the process first and we'd come to you afterward. However, this time, the bank's timing on our situation is a little bit off. They're a little anxious to get this resolved. They presented it a few weeks ago, and they're looking for an answer. So rather than wait until June and perhaps lose the opportunity, we decided to flip the two of them. The corporation would still follow all of the same steps substantively that it would if we did it in the order that we would prefer. It will just take it out of order. Just let me stop there for a moment and say, do you have any questions?
Why did we quit Kaleida? It was a better deal.
I can't hear you.
Kaleida, we had a previous joint loan with them.
Yeah, so KeyBank and ECMC jointly applied to Kaleida for an $8.1 million line of credit and a loan that was used to underwrite. Pardon me?
You said the client applied to KeyBank.
I did, I'm sorry.
That's okay, that's fine.
Kaleida and ECMC applied to KeyBank. Is that?
Yep,
what?
yep.
Okay. I thought I said that.
That's okay.
But okay. In any event, we applied to KeyBank for an $8.1 million loan with Kaleida in order to finance our MASH transaction. And when the transaction was recently spun off into what you now know as WellNow, you might remember our dialogue about that last year, Mr. Bennett. One of the terms that we incorporated into that transaction was the payoff of that loan. So it's been paid back. Any other questions?
Is there a motion?
Chair.
Motion been made, Dr. Grimm.
Also, it comes as a recommendation to the board for their approval as well as the motion.
Thank you. Mr. Seaman is a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, Tony.
Thank you.
Dr. Quattrochi.
Yes, as usual, we have our designation of naming of certain spaces that are included in your packet, so I'll just call for a motion on that.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Bishop Badger, any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Motion carries. And Dr. Flynn is out. Dr. Grimm?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I have in your board packet is the recommendation from the Credentials Committee that the Medical Executive Committee reviewed for. There were 12 resignations this month, 13 new appointments, however, 5 MDs, 1 anesthesiologist, 1 hospitalist, a neurosurgeon, an OMFS surgeon, and a wound care surgeon, along with 8 AHPs were recommended and approved by the Medical Executive Committee. I also want to bring to the board's attention that the medical staff bylaws were reviewed extensively. There were bylaw changes, not anything substantive enough, I think, to necessarily bring here, but just to let you know that that happened, and the vote is out with the medical staff now. I expect that there won't be any pushback on that, but I don't know if there'd be any questions about that, but the bylaws will be changed. They will be more in alignment with Kaleida's bylaws, and that since staff move easily between both institutions. So I would,
Motion made by Dr. Grimm. Is
for
there
the
a second? Mr. Seaman, further discussion? All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 And opposed? That motion carries. We're having real interference on the phone.
Can you put their phones on mute?
If you would, folks, please put your phones on mute. Thank you. Tom?
Okay, thank you. All righty. Just to obviously start off with quality, as we always do. We're going to implement tiered daily huddles at ECMC in August. So this is an effort that we've been talking about for a while, doing as a team. Is done across the country at many institutions. Actually, Andy, Dr. Murray, and Donna went to Cleveland Clinic to look at how they do it. But this is a system in which we'll bring some more data or some more detail back to in subsequent meetings, but which about probably 4 different huddles happen every single day in the institution to make sure that issues are being taken care of in real time. So we're very excited about this. We think that it's going to really help us tackle issues. So you don't have. It actually will hopefully cut down on meetings. Has in the institutions that have implemented it, because everybody's there every single day. And if you happen to be out, you send a representative. But this is really an opportunity for us in real time to handle situations and put people together on a daily basis to deal with quality issues and any other issues that may come about. So. There's report outs about what happened the day before, as well as some of the follow-up on initiatives and how they were dealt with. So we'll give you more detail as that and do a full presentation on that in later months. But we just want to let you know we're well on our way to making sure that happens. The 2019 Leapfrog Hospital Safety Score came out, and we are a B. We're obviously continuing to strive for an A. We're very proud of the organization that we've been continuing to be at a B. There's very few public safety net hospitals that are at an A, but we want to continue to be one of them. So we're continuing to work on some of the things such as hospital-acquired conditions and other things that add to that grade. They're still using some, as we talked about with the patient experience, they're still using some old data, so we're hoping that some of the new data is going to help us with that. High reliability executive leadership meeting, Joint Commission, we had a session on our journey to what we call zero harm. As you know, hospitals cause harm. And whether that be a hospital-acquired condition or any other type of situation. So we are on a journey to get to zero for hospital-acquired conditions. It's a very difficult journey, but we've been doing pretty well in making sure that our patients are safe and that we do not cause harm to them when they are here. So this is something obviously the Joint Commission is very focused on, but we as an organization continue to be very focused on. An American Association of Blood Banks had a survey, went very well. Pam, I don't know if you have any comments on that other than...
Yes, it went very well. A couple minor findings, but...
Okay, great, and we'll get an official report shortly. Okay, great, thank you. So I'm going to let Donna, why don't you do the patient experience slide here and talk a little bit about these bullets here.
Sure, so we kicked off during our patient experience hour power meeting, we kicked off one of several training modules that we'll be doing consecutively over the next 6 to 7 months. Again, just reinforcing, reinforcing patient experience and keeping it at the forefront, and then tying in our passion, our patients along with that as well. Karen talked about promoting joy in healthcare. So there's a series out there about really understanding and helping our clinician and healthcare providers really kind of focus on making sure that they're having joy, right? It sounds so simple, but very difficult. When you work in the service industry, and then particularly in healthcare, we give. That's what we do. We give, we give, we give, almost to a fault. So we're saying it's time to take a step back, and I don't know, Dr. Grimm, if you want to comment on that, but take a step back and really begin to find joy. Let that resonate a little bit, because I know all of us around the table kind of have that A-type personality, and sometimes we do. We have to take a step back and say, what makes me happy? Where's the joy? Am I spending time with family and friends? Am I spending time with individuals that love and support me? Additionally, we kicked off, again, training in leadership council in terms of education. We use the Barrel Institute. It's a learning bike that we use to take about 5 to 6 minutes. We go through, again, all of this as a means to keep patient experience at the forefront and at the center for everyone on an ongoing basis. And then our scores, we continue to improve. As you can see, nurse communication, physician communication, and overall rating, again, continues to increase year over year.
Great, thank you, Doc.
She said
Oh, go
I
ahead.
could
Yeah,
comment,
please, yeah,
so
yeah, please.
I
Dr.
can't resist.
No, thank you.
I guess
Thank you.
I would add, Donna, thank you, the joy in healthcare piece. I think to Tom's point, Tom always points out that our case mix index rises. We are dealing with very seriously ill patients. It's a population that I never dealt with when I started medicine. It's very difficult to be consistently joyful when you're seeing very sick people, often sick and dying, and it's hard. So it's really going to be an important initiative for the caregivers. It's more than just having enough exercise and good food. It's really bringing back the reason you went into healthcare. It seems small, but it's so critical.
It is, it's very critical, because it ties into performance.
Yeah.
I find it interesting you use the word joy versus happiness.
Yeah.
You know, joy is internal.
Yeah.
Happiness is
Right.
external, a happening, so
That's right.
just from a theological point.
No, it is joy.
Thank you. No, it's very important, and I think, we have many people in this organization who take a tremendous amount of joy in what they do, and we want to make sure that, they help others in the organization. As Dr. Bruce said, we do have very, very sick patients and see very difficult situations, so just more than a reminder, but also a reminder of what we got in healthcare for and why we do what we do. Culture, Trauma Awareness Month, we had a lot of celebrations, Mental Health Awareness Month, Nurses Week, we did a lot of celebrations, EMS Week, Dogs on the Deck. Daisy, we had a award ceremony or session for all the Daisy Award nominees. So we always have these sessions where we go up on the floors and we actually recognize people we surprise them on their floors for the winners. But we wanted to have a celebration for all the people who get nominations, because some people have had 10 nominations, for example. So this is, again, the Daisy Award, as a reminder, is an award given by patients. We get anywhere about 150 nominations a month for our nurses, so it's pretty impressive. And the nurses really take a tremendous amount of pride when they get a letter. Somebody sits down and writes a letter about them and what they did for them and what the difference that person was in their life when they were here. So you see a lot of nurses walking around with daisies on their lanyards, and they take a lot of pride. So it was a very nice event. We had patients come stand up and talk, and it was very emotional. So it was excellent. And again, back to the joy presentation, a reminder of why people do what they do here. Spring Fest, thank you everybody. Unbelievable, 2,008 people. And it was just, 1.2 million, just a wonderful night. Wow. People were going till, 1 o'clock in the morning again. We shut it down. But it was just really another event, another great night. And, Jim Kelly was phenomenal. The singing cops were great too. Bishop, they were good. So your son was wonderful. And they did a great job. And just from an image standpoint for our organization, just a home run. So thank you to everybody. Lose to win. I thought this was an interesting effort. We had 14 teams combined, weight loss total of 676 pounds. So very impressive that we continue to do wellness for our employees and make sure that they get healthier. And we are a healthcare institution after all. So culture, just a few recognitions. Just to note, one was Donna Gotti, recognized by the National Alliance of Mental Illness. Buffalo Erie County awarded the President's Award. She also received an award last year from the Mental Health Association for Professional of the Year. So we just have some great recognitions going on. You can read those there. Other individuals who are out in the community really either presenting or receiving awards on behalf of our organization. Nurses Week celebration. Again, I talked about that a little bit. National Trauma Survivors Day. We had a session where everybody sent a note to the clinicians and to the patients about their experience around trauma and how important people are in that process. And of course, our trauma professionals, as you know, are second to none and just do an unbelievable job with our patients. So another example of joy in the workplace. Again, Spring Fest, I talked about some pictures from Spring Fest and our honorees. Operations, Kensington Heights Community Advisory Committee has been going gangbusters. Thank you to John and Sharon for their efforts around this. We have a really, really good committee, thinking about, what possibilities there are for Kensington Heights. We have community members, we have members of the clergy, we have just a really, really good group. Habitat for Humanity is there today, and they're just doing a really good job of now developing a process to engage the community about what the community might like to see. And I think and Peter, you've heard it too, I think, the community is just very appreciative that we're reaching out to them and asking them for input around this. They're just very, very grateful. And Peter's been doing a great job with this too. Medical rehab, as we looked at our complement of patients in the building, we have a medical rehab unit in which we have 40 beds. And we've been running anywhere, probably about 25 patients. So those beds could not be occupied by medical patients because they were designated as medical rehab rooms. So it was creating a real challenge for us. We get into these surge situations and we literally would have a whole unit that was unoccupied. It was vacant. So we sat down with the rehab unit and made a decision to have it be a 20-bed unit for medical rehab so that we could open 20 beds for med surge. We're actually going to end up doing about 17 in that configuration because just the way our units are configured again, we might have had a couple more rehab beds, but their census has been running about that. So I think it's going to be a good thing obviously for summer surge that's coming up. We obviously have a lot of people waiting in the emergency room as we move forward, but obviously a medical decision as much as a business decision for us as an institution. 2019 budget goals. Steve's going to talk a little bit about our budget goal, and we've been working really hard as a team. I want to thank the team for all the work that they've been doing to identify areas that will take us to make sure we hit our budget by the end of the year. So I know at the last meeting, John, you'd asked about kind of areas, and we've talked to the finance committee and the executive committee about those areas. But in broad terms, we're going to give that information to the board, and then if you have any other questions afterwards, Steve will be happy to answer those. But again, I think the team's doing a really good job focusing to make sure that we hit our budget, and most importantly, to make sure we try to do that without having to walk folks out the door doing layoffs and those types of things. So, so with that, that's the end of my report. Other than just real quick to go over statistics, we have recast our budget on volumes, and as you can see, so you'll see the budget and the volumes, actual budget be zero because we're recasting our volumes, but you'll see the other things that we measure, such as length of stay, average acute length of stay. Because our case mix has been so high, we are seeing a longer length of stay. Observation cases continue to go through the roof, so when we talk about that dynamic, I've talked about it before, the insurance companies and also the federal government, the criteria for observation patients versus admissions patients has changed slightly. This is a dynamic that's going on all over the place because I've talked to other hospitals. So we're starting to see patients that had previously been described as inpatients be classified as observation patients. We get about $10,000 less a patient, and we provide almost the same amount of services. So it's a real challenge for us. It's, frankly, in my view, a way of getting us paid less for doing the same amount of work. So we're continuing to look at those observation patients and make sure that we're appropriately classifying them as observation or as inpatients so that we make sure we're being reimbursed properly. But as you can see, we obviously continue to be very busy in the operating room and a lot of admissions through the emergency department. So with that, I'll ask if there's any questions. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Steve. Steve?
Thank you. Thanks, Tom. So the Finance Committee met last week, reviewed real quickly the financial performance. We reviewed with the Finance Committee, noting for the month of April we had a $2.3 million operating loss, essentially on budget. We're $50,000 off budget, $400 and some thousand off of last year. the real principal differences are driven by Joint Commission readiness expenses. We're investing a lot in some repairs and maintenance costs and deep cleaning, and some of those things are really what's driving that variance. And year to date, we reviewed the results with the Finance Committee. We're about $1.5 million off pace for our budget here and off last year. And again, we had the January snowstorm that we talked about at this group before, as well as the Joint Commission issues that I just spoke about. The projections, once we got through the third quarter, as Tom reported on, we thought we'd take a look at our projections out for the rest of the year. And through the third quarter, we're at about a $3.4 million operating loss. And with the trends in the first quarter and our budget for the rest of the year, we would have generated $400,000 worth of operating income the rest of the way, right, from April through December. And really what you see here is the kind of cumulative efforts of what Tom had just spoke about. I think the principal message here is that our budget goal still is attainable. We still believe our budget goal is the right goal for the year and is not changed. It's a little bit different worth of initiatives and how we get there. So at a real high level, first and foremost, we talked here, I think last time, about the impact of the New York State budget and the final changes that we knew versus what we put into the budget. You may recall we had, for example, a 0% rate increase from Medicaid versus what finally came through with the state budget. That generated an additional $1.8 million to the good. Tom mentioned salary cost savings of about $1.3 million, really focused on overtime controls, how do we backfill positions and work through replacement positions. We have supply chain and pharmacy savings of $2.3 million. That's our activities as we jointly work together with Kaleida around group purchasing. We moved to a common group purchasing organization. We've established joint value analysis committees, so we have Kaleida and ECMC physicians working with the supply chain folks, and Kaleida and ECMC nurses working with the supply chain folks to identify opportunities where we can standardize and get better pricing on all of our contracts. Some other expense savings, there's a whole host of initiatives that the entire executive team, Andy's done a nice job of leading that, are involved in. Here for a little over $1 million. And then other operating revenue, about $450,000 worth of an increase in other operating revenue. That is reinstating our parking charges as a result of the new parking gates coming online, as well as some additional grant funding that we secured for some existing expenses that we have. Lastly, we thought it'd be prudent to put $1 million worth of, for lack of a better term, cushion into the projections, just for things we cannot anticipate that might happen here, that we thought we'd add a layer of conservatism into our projections, so that at the end of the year, the most important issue here is the budget becomes the actual, and we still think our budget goal is valid. So with that, questions?
Questions for Steve? Thank you, Steve. I'll dispense with report from the executive committee and go to the finance. Mike?
Yeah, just real quick, and normally we would be doing this in the third or fourth quarter of the year to tighten our belts up to make these changes. It's an unusual thing, and I think we're prepared to handle it. It's happening in the first quarter. And I think the goal is still the budget number. So I think the executive staff is making the necessary change, and if you want more details on that, you can check with Steve or Tom on that. But I think the ultimate goal is that we're still going to be maintaining the budget number that we anticipate.
Thank you, Mike. Building and grounds, Mr. Bennett.
Everything seems to be moving along according to schedule. Glad to see now they're doing the interior studying of the walls inside the ED, so that there's a little change now can be made. and they're not intending to make too many changes. And so that's a very positive sign that we're now at that point.
Thank you, Mr. Bennett. Bishop,
Yes,
HR.
HR, and I'll let Joe elaborate, but one of the discussions we had was on, there was a presentation done about diversity. And as we talk about, those quality measures, I think that plays into the whole issue of diversity, especially in our middle management areas. We talked about that. We've got 3,800 employees and we've got one diversity officer with no help. So, Tom, we're asking you to look at that.
She already approached me.
Well, we told her as a board, we support her and we would bring it up.
Yeah, I think there's there's ways to tie some of the resources that we currently have to be able to help her out with it.
And with that, I know we got the NISNA contract. I'll let Joe take it from there.
NISNA first round of economics. The non-economics are settled. T8 for all intents and purposes. We've reached a tentative agreement on those. We started with the first round of negotiations and we plan on moving to the second round, and I anticipate we'll get a lot closer. That'll happen on the 13th of June. But I think right now we're moving in the right direction, so I'm pretty comfortable with where we are.
Thank you, Joe.
That's it?
And Mike, QI?
Yes, Don, we had our meeting and the report is in your packet there. I just wanted to really let the folks know that in regards to the quality, we're doubling down our efforts with that. The new the presentation that was done by Donna Jones was superb. I don't know if Donna is there and could talk about that for the quality report.
She's in a meeting, Mike, so no, she's not here.
I'm sorry, because I really wanted to get something on it. I wish I was there.
Okay, anything else? Is there any old or new business? Then we stand adjourned. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.